All right. Welcome. This is episode 4 of Badass Women in Climate. I'm so excited to speak to Angeline Chen from Global Coralition. She's incredibly inspiring to me, and the work she's doing is great and very holistic to life. And I'm so excited that she's here to talk to us today. Hi, Angeline.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me here and your first remote stream. I'm really honored and excited.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see. It might be a little bumpy, but yeah, this is our first remote. This is the first one that's not in the Trellis podcasting studio. Well, it's in the podcasting studio here at Trellis, but it's not in like the 2-seater in-person area that I've filmed in before. So yeah, this is new. We're using some software we haven't used before. It's all, we're figuring it out. So
Nice.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. So let me just do a little introduction of who you are. And you're so many things, but I feel like they all fit together into this beautiful whole. You are an artist, you're an activist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a new mama, you have a 6-month-old, you're a global citizen, and you've co-founded the Art Rising, Global Coralition, OR, which I'm not sure what that is, and I'm excited to dig into it, Carbon P3, CO2E, and Dreams Unlimited. So would you give yourself a little intro and maybe a couple sentences about some of these things that you're working on?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Angeline. I actually grew up in China. My family they grew up during the Cultural Revolution, which I always feel like is a significant part of my story. It's definitely shaped a lot of my journey and kind of the my karmic background and things that my parents have instilled in me. And I moved to the States for college. I studied economics and political science, did my master's in economic development. And through all that, I actually found my school of life in yoga, which really opened up my world in philosophy and consciousness and realizing that I could create my own reality, this idea of like positive manifestation, kind of bridging that with the type of courses I was taking, which was a lot of like politics and what was happening in the world and business and how our businesses are shaped and after graduating, I actually realized one thing, which was I didn't want to work in a job. I couldn't like go like sit at a desk and be working in an office. And I left to India and I went on a soul journey. And that actually opened yoga and traveling actually opened up my myself into the artist that was within myself, and also partner, my husband Kyle, who's an amazing artist, and he's been creating work since he was like, I think he made his first comic book when he was 5, like Carrot Man. But all those things really helped the artist within me blossom. Also, California, I was in college in San Diego, and witnessing like the West Coast kind of psychedelic boom that was happening when I was in school, and being able to bridge that artistry with what kind of my background and my studies had brought, which was like a care for the world and a care for the way our world is structured and operates, and just realizing that there is a lot of suffering in the world. There's a lot of challenges that we're facing forward, and how can art and consciousness and healing make a difference in that space? So that was kind of like my two worlds coming together. And so the Art Rising was the first project we created, and the idea was to create art with Indigenous and local artists around the world, and use the proceeds of that art to fund philanthropic projects in the places where those artists lived.
Mm-hmm.
So we launched our first project in Thailand, worked with Cambodian, Thai, and Burmese woodcarvers, and showcased that work in New York. And then the two projects we funded was a playground in a Burmese refugee camp. We ended up learning all about the Burmese refugee crisis and, how people have been living in these camps for decades. Children are being born into these camps, and just the challenges that they're facing there. And the second project we ended up building was our first sculpture that became a coral reef. And
Mm-hmm.
living in Thailand, it was like my first time spending intimate time in the ocean and overcoming my fear of the ocean, and fell in love with this coral reef, witnessed it dying and degrading over about 2 years of time. And that's when we started exploring, like, how can art play a role in the regeneration of our reefs?
Mm.
And we did a lot of research. We found some other projects around the world of underwater sculptures. And so we did our first one, and after that, we had the honor of meeting a really amazing human that many of you might know, Tom Chi. And
Yeah.
he was really inspiring for us. He's super passionate about coral reefs, but he showed us a lot of the science and the solutions that are out there to regenerate coral reefs,
Mm.
specifically being able to grow coral on land, and how there's different techniques that we can use to help increase the biomass, help breed coral babies together to create new biodiversity in the
Mm.
ocean. Just a lot of techniques that are very exciting. And so then we created Global Coralition, which is our nonprofit, which essentially is uniting art, science, and communities around restoring our marine ecosystems. And so that project is really, how do we use large scale art? So we build these like 18-foot tall, 20 feet tall sculptures, often inspired by and created in collaboration with Indigenous and cultural leaders in the area. How
Mm-hmm.
do we build something that's really going to inspire and resonate with the local community and help bring awareness to the needs of the ocean in the area? And how do we catalyze action in the local community around restoring those reefs? And so the Dominican Republic was our main pilot project. We built this giant fertility goddess, Atabe. She's the mother of water. And she is from the Arawak Taino indigenous culture of the Caribbean, which has been long, they've been written off as a paper genocide, but they've also been now discovering that there's more Tainos living today than there were
Oh, amazing.
before colonization. And so Atabe, she was deployed into the ocean, and a part of our approach to, okay, this is a very long-winded,
No, I love it.
long-winded introduction.
It all holds together so beautifully.
Gosh, thank you. Hopefully you'll be able to figure out how to cut all of this. But I guess, like, one thing I wanted to share is that as we were learning and trying to figure out how do we restore a reef, we were
Mhm.
realizing there's so many aspects to what makes a healthy coral reef. So, one of them is the health of the water, the quality of the water that's flowing from the rivers into the ocean. One of them is the health of the fish populations, which eat the algae off of the reef, and that also is impacted by the fishermen and how their livelihood and their
Mhm.
awareness around how to have healthy relation with the fish populations. Another aspect is just like the community awareness and the tourism relationship with the reefs.
Mhm.
Um, and so as we were figuring out how do you actually regenerate a coral reef, we were also realizing we have to think about all these other factors.
Mm.
And so that helped us create an approach that was what we consider a holistic perspective, and some other people call it a ridge to reef approach on reef restoration. So even thinking about
Did you say it again? A ridge to reef?
ridge to reef approach. So, even looking at a bioregion or a specific area around a reef, if is there runoff coming from the rivers that are flowing into the
Mm-hmm.
ocean? So being able to find the source of where some of the problems are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And so
So go literally upstream.
yes, yeah. So one thing we found in the Dominican Republic is the reefs are severely overfished. The fish population has gone down to probably less than 10% in the area where we were working. And so
Wow.
marine protection was a really important solution. So we had amazing local partner named Magua Foundation. They helped move forward marine protection with the government, and they started employing fishermen to actually protect the area. And what we learned is that the fishermen, they're sometimes the villains in the situation, but really this is their livelihood, and um, they've struggled because the conditions of the oceans are getting less healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have to go farther and farther to get fish, and the needs of the consumers and the tourists are getting higher. And so a lot of the solutions we were exploring was how can we onboard fishermen into conservation so that
Mm-hmm.
they have these alternative lively options that are actually also regenerating the ecology. So we would onboard them into becoming rangers and protecting key areas. And one thing that you get with marine protected areas is over a few years, the fish populations will recover and they'll actually overflow outside of the protected area. And then you have long-term food security for many generations. So it's a really amazing and effective conservation method.
And the fishermen are able to see that in just like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, you can see impacts within a few years of really great marine protection. And we also pair it with coral farming techniques. So as I was mentioning, there's land-based coral farming techniques and also underwater coral farming techniques. So we partner with our local NGOs, and they're practicing underwater techniques, and we have a land-based farm there where we are practicing a technique called microfragmentation, where we can actually slice coral into tiny pieces. And they found that they want to regenerate and grow, and they're cloning animals, so they're actually kind of like multiplying and dividing and cloning themselves to increase the biomass of the coral that's left.
And you were mentioning, I think on your website, I read this, that farm-based or land-based coral farming is 50 times faster
Yeah,
than ocean-based.
there's a lot of different facilities out there and people practicing these techniques. They've actually come from the aquarium industry and they've been practiced for many, many decades. I think it was actually an aquarist that introduced it into the restoration space, and they've found that bringing corals on land and working with these techniques where we can be a lot more efficient. And one, because of just the time that you can spend on land with tanks in a laboratory type setting, it's a lot more accessible than being in the water with tanks and with dive tanks where you have maybe an hour and a half underwater. And also the specific techniques that you can use on land, they've found one is called microfragmentation, and then the other one's called larval propagation. And both of these are really promising in being able to increase biomass and biodiversity of coral. Just to share, I'm getting like pretty specific and
No, get into it. I love, you have such a melodic way of speaking also. I'm just like, I'm really, really tuned in. I think
cool.
all of our listeners are gonna just love hearing from you.
Oh, awesome. I mean, I'll also share, I'm not a coral scientist, and I've only like learned all of this from other amazing people working in the space. And for me, it's been really inspiring to know that these solutions exist, but also be able to hopefully be a bridge to help translate some of the science. Because I think one of my ultimate goals and our ultimate goals in the organization is how can we help accelerate scientific solutions that,
Mhm.
and this, I think this is the scenario with climate science in general, is that and Gus Speth, who's a US environmental lawyer, says a beautiful quote where he says, like, we've known these solutions for the last 30-40 years. We've had the science, but we haven't been able to solve the climate issues. And he says, what I think we really need is a cultural and spiritual revolution. And we
Yeah.
scientists don't know how to do that. And so that's where I think
Mhm.
that the artists really come in, and the creatives and the philosophers and the teachers. And, we come in to help be that bridge between the science and even the people who can fund the science, or the local people on the ground that can learn the science and actually implement it in their communities. And
Mm.
I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
gap that I hope we all can figure out how to close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so with the coral, what something I learned that was really interesting is that a coral the size of your brain can take about 30 years to grow. And maybe every year it grows about like half a centimeter outwards. So they grow
Mhm.
very slowly. Corals are also I think, the oldest living biological organisms on Earth. And the current
Mm.
oldest one is 4,000 years old. It's also, I think, the only living biological thing that you can see from space. Uh,
Wow.
and they're also, I'll just share this, why they're significant on Earth is that they call it the jeweled belt around the Earth. Sylvia Earle calls it that. And they support 25% of all marine life. They absorb 97% of wave and storm energy, and so they protect coasts.
Mm.
Provide 500 million to 1 billion people around the world with food and livelihood. So there's about 100 different countries with coral reefs, and most of them depend on them for tourism and for fish. And they also say we're 300 to 400 times more likely to find new medicine in the ocean than we are on land. Um,
Really?
so there's a lot of bioactive compounds in our corals that have been used for creating medicine for different viruses and cancer. Um,
Wow.
mhm. So, yeah,
So important. So we should be taking care of our corals.
they're important, yeah. And obviously they affect the health of the ocean, and the ocean is also like our biggest carbon sink, and also producing over half of the oxygen that we breathe. So just ocean health in general is super important. So yeah, with the coral the size of your brain, what they found is that if you slice the coral into these teeny tiny pieces, it's like when you get a cut on your skin and it wants to heal.
Mhm.
The coral does the same thing. So it gets cut and then it wants to grow, and it kind of like activates this regenerative capability of it. And so it starts growing, and then people will plant these um, little slices of coral near onto a ceramic plug, and then they'll
Mhm.
plant those plugs near each other, and those that have the corals that have the same DNA will eventually fuse back together.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but that's how they're actually now able to multiply the size of what was originally that size of a brain.
Okay, so
Makes sense.
is that where that statistic came from? That
So
is
there,
it fragmentation that's 50 times faster, or
yeah, so microfragmentation is a technique that we can use that could help cultivate coral and grow coral up to 50 times faster, because we can grow them in
got
tanks.
it?
We were doing some like projections of, if if we had X number of tanks and we could grow like 2,500 corals per tank. And if we were to outplant these and plant them about 5 centimeters away from each other, how many acres of coral reef could we regrow? And we had estimated with 20 tanks over 10 years of time, we could regrow 7 acres of coral reef, which is
Wow.
a large surface. And currently, I think the average ocean-based restoration work, usually the footprint is about 200 square meters.
Wow.
It's really hard to like scale surface with coral. But there, I think there is the potential. We were imagining if there were tanks all over the world, every farm had 20 tanks. Over a few decades of time, there could be a lot of coral restored. And just being able to really think about how do we create the coral farming technology in an affordable way that it's adopted by local communities. How can people be trained, potentially by aquarists who have this knowledge on how to cultivate coral in these ways? And we actually have friends who are working on underwater drones that can take the microfragments and swim out into the ocean and plant coral on degraded reef using drone technology, which would be incredible in the coming years if
Yeah.
if we could really figure that out. And another just one of the concerns about cultivating coral in this way that some people would bring up is what about, you don't want to be monocropping a coral reef, because a coral reef also requires a certain level of biodiversity to be a healthy reef. And so one of the other amazing things about corals is that once a year, under the full moon of the hottest month of the year, all corals in a reef will release eggs and sperm into the ocean. And then they will all look to fertilize, either sexually or asexually, and then land somewhere and try and grow into a baby coral.
Wow. That sounds like some magic voodoo.
Yes, it's incredible. People are like, how do all the corals know to do it at this exact time? And why is it once under the full moon of the hottest month of the year, it's this like magical cosmic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it microscopic or is it visible?
I think it is visible. You can see the little eggs, and you can see some beautiful footage. And I actually haven't gotten to witness it in real life, but I've seen some amazing footage. And
wow,
a lot of our friends go out during those months just to try and see it. And so what's also incredible is that scientists have found that they can go and collect the eggs and sperm. Well, one thing I didn't mention is that in nature, only 1 in a million of those will actually survive into a baby coral. Because most of them get swept away by the waves or eaten by fish. But scientists have found they can go and collect the eggs and sperm, bring it into their lab, and they can help them fertilize in the lab. And they can get over 90% success of fertilization.
Whoa.
And what's interesting is that we've currently lost about half of our reefs worldwide from climate change and pollution and overfishing, and the pH of the ocean is changing, the temperatures are rising. So these are all pressures that have been causing a lot of die-offs of the reefs. You might have also heard of like different diseases that are coming through, affecting different species. But the corals that have survived are believed to have stronger resilience, and by cultivating those and helping those to breed together, essentially, they believe we could be creating new types of coral species that have this stronger resilience, changing conditions of the ocean. There's actually a university in Hawaii, and the Ruth Gates Lab. They were doing a lot of studies on creating what they called supercorals, which was really kind of stress testing and pushing the evolution of corals to become resilient in our future conditions of potentially very high temperatures and very high pH levels of our oceans.
Wow.
And one amazing kind of side note story is that the process that they're using to test that is called mutagenesis.
Mhm.
And my father, the year that I was born, he was living here in California, going to Caltech. My father has a crazy story, living through the Cultural Revolution, having to become a farmer, became an immigrant to the US, um, got into biochemistry, and he's really brilliant and went to MIT, did his postdoc at Caltech, and he was working on his paper here, and he left and got recruited to other jobs after that. But about 20 plus years later, we found out that the paper he was working on won the Nobel Prize,
Oh my gosh.
and it was for mutagenesis. And he didn't win the prize. His professor won the prize. But we later found out that it was being used in coral science by the
Oh
Reef
my
Case,
god.
which was just a really beautiful kind of, yeah,
Full circle.
full circle moment for our family. He didn't really get the recognition for it, but we were able to celebrate, his work, and he's also able to see it be alive in the work that Kyle and I are doing in our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. It's been a really beautiful personal
Wow.
story for us. Um,
So would you tell me, so you have a couple of orgs that I know, Global Coralition, which
mhm.
I want you to tell us about. But then OR, Carbon P3, and CO2E, and Dreams Unlimited. I'm curious about all these other projects or companies, or what are all these?
Sure. So Global Coralition, I was just sharing about, it's our nonprofit that's really focused on marine conservation. And I wanted to share that there's a study right now. We're estimated to lose 90% of our reef by 2050, which is a very sad statistic. However, there's two amazing studies that came out recently, and one is it's called the 50 Reefs study, and they identified 50 reefs around the world that are an optimum portfolio of coral reefs to conserve. And if these key areas could become biodiversity hotspots, they believe
Mhm.
that they could reseed other regions over time. And so these 50 reefs, they hit almost every continent. It's Southeast Asia, Eastern Africa, the Middle East, around Egypt, the Caribbean, and Brazil. And this other study came out. It's called Rebuilding Marine Life, and it talks about how marine ecosystems actually recover very fast. That with the right interventions, they believe we can actually rebuild marine life by 2050. And so those two kind of recent um, revelations, um, we kind of using that as our guiding North Star for Global Coralition. And part of what we're on a mission to do is target these 50 reef sites and
Mhm.
partner with local NGOs and um, create sculptures at each one of these to also help create an identity for each reef, help raise awareness about
Mhm.
each reef, and then also then catalyze the scientific and ecological interventions, specifically around marine protection, both ocean-based and land-based coral farming. And the third one is mangrove restoration. And so that segues into one of our companies, which is Carbon P3 and CO2E.
Mm.
Basically, what we found is that mangroves are very effective at removing carbon. They
Mhm.
filter and cool water before, usually they're in brackish water or upstream of coral reefs. So they filter and cool the water before it reaches the ocean.
Mm.
They're also a really amazing habitat for birds, fish, turtles, and their roots sink deep into the soil, so they also prevent soil erosion. And they're one of the most effective nature-based solutions we have for sequestering carbon. They
Mhm.
sequester 4 to 10 times more carbon than terrestrial trees. Every 3 mangroves can sequester 1 metric ton of carbon over its lifetime, which they measure is about 20 years. And we've launched a project in the Dominican Republic in collaboration with our friends who started a project called Despre Haiti. They've been working in Haiti for a couple decades. And between the two regions, we've planted about 1.2 million mangroves to date.
Wow.
And and we've been able to plant each tree for under $1. So
Incredible.
we basically have like $1 for a tree model where people can donate $1 and plant a tree. And what we've been learning as well is that there's a lot of hype and a lot of potential and a lot of challenges with the carbon credit space, where companies and governments want to offset their carbon and buy these credits. But one of the big challenges is that the credits there's a lot of just not there's a challenge in tracking transparency and
Right.
a challenge of trust in the space. They say only 3% of carbon credit projects are pure credits or clean credits.
Mm.
A lot of them are also like focused on avoiding emissions versus actually being able to remove carbon.
Mm-hmm.
And so mangroves specifically help solve a lot of those things. It is scope 3. You're able to actually remove carbon from the atmosphere and store it permanently in the soil. There's also a lot of biodiversity benefits, community benefits, because you can employ local people. And one of the big gaps we found in the space is still that transparency and that trust. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we're developing is CO2E, is an app where you can the people planting on the ground will capture a photo of every single tree that they plant.
Mm-hmm.
It gets stored on the blockchain, so it's
Mm.
a ledger, and then it also gets geotagged, date stamped, and down the line we can be updating pictures, so it can update the height of the tree. It can be measuring the amount of carbon removed based on the age of the tree. And now we'd like to be basically developing a platform where donors and projects on the ground can be connected, and all of the work can be transparently shared and verified.
I
Um,
love that. That
yeah,
is, I think that's the future.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really exciting, and there actually is so much energy and interest
Is that your
in
baby?
that's the baby.
She's welcome to be a part of the podcast if you
Oh,
so
thank
desire.
you. Yeah, let me grab her just because she. Hi, Saber.
Hi. Hi,
It's
sweetheart.
Saber.
How do you pronounce her name?
It's Ceiba, Ceiba, which is a type of tree.
Ah,
Yeah, it's a tree. There's a lot of them in the Dominican Republic, which is where we fell in love with the Ceiba tree.
hi, babe. We're doing this work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. She's the best. If any of you listeners don't have babies yet, babies are the best.
I feel like I have one son who will turn 9 in a little bit under a week, and he is my reason for diving into climate
Mm,
resilience. I know, I feel climate change. It's happening. We're experiencing it day to day. And I feel a deep need to make the world flourish for Sawyer and
mm,
for Sawyer's children. And there's something about being a mom that I think really there's so much more purpose to the work that we're doing because it's not just for us. It's for our very progeny, and it's for everyone, it's for all life, and it feels so like every day I can wake up and know I'm working towards a flourishing future for my son, who I also see every day, and it's just like it's right there in front of me, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I honestly get very nervous about the future. Like I often am like apocalypse planning in my off time. Just like wondering like where is a safe place to live, and how do we build resilience with communities, and a lot of Global Coralition, the vision is how do we create coastal resilience for island communities. Um, but yeah, it's interesting when you go outside and you see how beautiful the day is, and everything seems great, and it's not necessarily like right in front of your doorstep until maybe one day it does come to your doorstep. And I'm in LA, and we just had the crazy wildfires, and
Yeah.
we had evacuees staying with us, and a lot of friends that lost homes. And yeah, it's a crazy time to be alive. And yeah, I'm hoping we, I think with, at least in the coral space, and I think it probably translates to other parts of the climate space, they say we have like a 30-year period to really figure things out and figure out how to, you know, try to avoid irreversible damage and build better systems where we can be in greater harmony with our natural world and with the way that we're operating as a species, and become more efficient. And that's where I also love the merging of technology with ancient wisdom, because I think that there's a lot we can learn and do with those two sides
Yeah.
there.
I think that that's right. I don't know if you know Peter Layden.
I've
He
heard that.
was the editor-in-chief for Wired magazine, and has written some pretty incredible futurism articles. His latest one is called The Great Progression, and talks about how we are, in his mind, and it's based on a lot of science and data, and through a lens of optimism, which should be said. But he talks a lot about how from 2000 to 2025, we had this like growing in a number of ways, but also kind of a breaking in a lot of ways. And he feels that right now we are in kind of the last death throes of a conservative right, and are about to launch on a three-pronged path for the next 25 years of immense like growth and flourishing. And it's AI and what does he say? Transformative technologies, and how that all fits with nature and renewable energy. And he feels like AI, renewable energy, and something about biological. Oh, I think bio development in terms of like human made proteins, and like there's so much science into how we grow food. So he feels like all of those three things happening at the same time, when we had like the Industrial Revolution was like one thing at a time, and internet was like one thing at a time, and now we have three world changing things happening all at the same time. So he feels like these next 25 years are just going to be like,
oh my gosh. Yeah, to even think how much has happened just in the last 100 years.
Yeah. Or last 25 years. I mean, my son will never know what it's like to not have the internet, not have cell phones. Like when I was little, I wasn't born with internet in our house. We had a dial-up modem. It was so slow. And no cell phone, certainly no smartphone. I think I had I had a pager. I had a pager in high school, and we would send little messages to each other using like the numbers, but you only had like nine slots, so you could say like hi.
That's amazing.
Yeah, different world.
Yeah.
When I asked you some of these questions ahead of time, one of them that I really like is, what are you most proud of having created in the world?
I don't remember what I wrote to you, but at the moment, definitely say that is number one. Just like, yeah, just one. I going through birth was such a wild, mind-blowing experience for me, and just imagining that every single mother on earth goes through birth was just an incredible thought too. Like the amount of strength and power and selflessness and courage that it takes to birth a human, but also to birth everything that we bring into the world. That it's just an amazing thing that humans can do and that life does. So I love the creative process, and yeah, Seva for me is definitely number one. Being able to bring her into this world and all that will unfold from there. And I would say, it's hard to, like, out of all the projects and things that we've created, they all kind of have their own special place in my heart. And I think another, just an interesting piece is like, I've seen it evolve a lot. I've seen it go from like one project to the next and to the next, and how like as we keep, it just keeps evolving before us. And yeah, I think sometimes like recognizing that that's the creative process too. The Art Rising turned into the Global Coralition, which is now turned into the Mangrove Project, and then turned into this app, because we keep learning what the needs are, and we keep being flexible to evolve based on what the need is.
I love that. That makes so much sense. That leads me to another question, and I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask one last question, and then we can see where we're at. You have a child, you have all of these projects, and you work all over the world and with different like policy. I mean, it's just, when I think of what you're doing, it seems like just so much. How do you feel balanced, or like life is moving too fast for you to keep a hold of? And two, if you feel balanced, what do you think supports or services that sense of balance?
Yeah, I actually feel very balanced.
Yeah,
Like
that's amazing. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how you were going to answer this. I wasn't sure how you were going to answer that question.
Yeah, no, I feel very grateful and feel very supported. One thing about, like, I'm gonna pass the baby actually, because I have support. Thank you. yeah, just have yeah, having community and having family and having friends and collaborators that really help keep keep everything afloat, like from the projects to the family. And so I'm super grateful for that. I think one of the things that I hope to get to is like living in community and living as a village, because I think that's really how we've lived for thousands of years, and it's really what I realize we need. We
Mm,
need that type of support system and community back. Um, and so, yeah, and I would also say for me, like the personal self practices, like I still do yoga every day. I still bring in a lot of my philosophy and positive affirmations and just like self care practices that started me on this journey. It's all still very integrated in my day to day.
mm.
Um, and and it's really interesting, one thing I wanted to share is like my healing journey was very integral in kind of being able to process my own personal healing to get to a point where I could then dedicate my life more in service of things outside of myself, but
Mhm.
then being able to always still take care of myself, in the day to day. And even through the work of being in service of things outside of myself, I find myself healing and healed through that work.
Mhm.
And so that's something I just think is really beautiful about being in the climate space or being in humanitarian work, is that we are like, there's a healing that happens for us by doing what we're doing. Um,
I love that way of thinking about it. Would you say that in your healing, so I have a quite a lot of anxiety as I think like a genetic baseline. Um, and I wonder if that has ever been a part of your experience because you present as so calm
mm,
and feel balanced, which is
mm,
even quite a bit more important. I would say than outward appearances.
mm.
Um, is that something that you've overcome?
Um, I would say, I mean, I definitely I'm an Aries, so I have a lot of fire. And
Mm,
back in like when I was younger, it would come out like my fire would come out in like, I don't want to call it rage, but I'm gonna use that word right now. And not necessarily knowing where it was coming from, or whether like what was triggering those emotions was like logical, or
mhm,
if it was coming from like places that didn't need to trigger me in that way.
mhm,
And I would say through finding different practices that worked for me, that helped um, kind of like bring more balance. Like, to be honest, actually working with the water and being in the ocean and has actually
mm,
balanced my fire. And I notice when I'm in places where I can swim every day and be in the ocean, it actually like helps regulate me. But also, I think, yeah, I found key practices that really helped me, and I also tried to learn where that rage, for example, came from. And I think for me, just to share like very openly, I think it came from my own insecurities and my like lack of um, self confidence. And so when
mhm,
I was what I ended up working on was my self love practice. How do
mm,
I really build this like love and relationship with myself? And through cultivating that, I became more confident. I became more just comfortable, and those things that would have triggered me started to diminish.
Mm.
So I notice, of course, like the healing journey never ends and things still emerge in moments, but it's much less frequent. And even when it does happen, I'm able to recognize it and learn from it faster. And also then access my tools that help me come back to a place of, come back to ideally operate at my highest self and my most
Mhm.
kind and loving self, both to myself and others. So I think that's what I've found throughout my journey.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I want to um, ask, this is something that I've been asking at each interview.
Mm.
What advice do you have for someone trying to join the fight for climate resilience that maybe is in a full-time job or between jobs and wants to plug in, knows how important it is, and is not sure how to start, where to get started, where to plug in?
Mhm. Yeah, I would share. I mean, I would love to encourage everyone in the whole world to get into the climate space,
Me too.
some way or form. And also, it's just such an exciting world to be in, knowing that like what we all do now is making a big difference in what the future looks like. And there's so many areas to get involved in. And I would say some of the great things to think about are, what are you really passionate about? Is there one or a few specific things that you've found that you really connect with and care for? And for us, it came from a very real personal experience with a reef, and just like falling in love with this reef and watching it die. It was very personal to us. And maybe
Mm,
there's something like that for you, whether it's like seeing trash on the floor, or seeing food being wasted and turning into methane, or um, I don't know, seeing like there I don't know, there's just so many different areas you can get involved in. One thing I loved along my journey of kind of finding, even when we were figuring out how to develop the Art Rising, is we thought about what were I was making a lot of lists. I was like, this is part of my self-care practice too, which was like, what am I really good at? What are
mm,
my skills? What are things I really care about in the world? And what are things that the world really needs? And then starting to try and pull and draw connections between those things on that list.
mhm,
Actually, it's I think a Japanese philosophy called ikigai, which is where you find like the connection between those things, what the world needs and what you're good at. And those exercises really helped me. And when you can start to identify those things, then I would advise, like, do tons of research, like go into some deep rabbit holes of like, I learned everything about coral reefs as I possibly could, and like I was
mm,
like calling like the University of Hawaii, trying to like talk to Ruth Gates, and just be you have like knowledge at your fingertips with the internet, and start to look into things and see if there's either an organization or a project or a methodology that sparks something within you.
mm,
You really also want to be inspired, and you want to love what you're doing. And I think that's the best part for me, especially being able to be in the work that we do, is that we love every moment. It's not work, it's our joy. We call our job our joy of being. Like, we love every moment that we get to spend on this, and also knowing that it's for a better world, and it's fulfilling for that reason. So I would say, yeah, do lots of research, reach out to people that you see that are doing things that inspire you, because you also never know like what kind of collaborations might emerge and where your skills might fit into something that other people need. We we've yeah, we've worked with so many people in different iterations, and I know for each person we've worked with, it's evolved our journey and it's evolved their journey. And even the conversations, like one call can shift me or them in a different way along their journey. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do a lot of calls just because we're like, what are you working on? And what are we working on? And actually, just to share CO2e, we were working with mangroves, but we met somebody who wants to work with biochar, which is a really exciting way to take bio waste and convert it into charcoal and put it into the soil to create nutrients for the soil, and
Mhm.
also avoid all the methane that's getting released into the atmosphere. And so now we're trying to create a portion of our app that can help measure biochar. And so you just really never know how things will evolve, and who you might be able to connect with, and how that might just completely change the course of your life.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, don't be afraid to shift gears, and potentially even quit a job and try a completely new path. And even in the beginning of that journey, you may question a lot whether this is the right thing, and you might feel financial instability and insecurity, which we had a lot of that throughout our early years. But at some point, like every time I was faced with that insecurity, I would replace it with action and just put
Mm.
the energy into what it was. And over the years, it just keeps growing and it keeps growing, and you keep getting further along the journey, and you just have to stay committed to it. And yeah, I I just wish everyone the best, and also to please reach out if you want to collaborate, or also just want some support or advice or guidance, or if you're interested in a particular topic, and maybe we know people in that space and can connect you there.
Oh, that's so kind. I really appreciate that. How that leads me to the last question, which is, how do people find you? What are your preferred links, handles?
Yeah, so we have our website, globalcoralition.org, also our Instagram, Global Coralition, the Art Rising on Instagram, and the artrising.com. That's kind of more of our personal art world. And then co2e.ai, that's a website and on Instagram. That'll be our main, like, mangrove carbon removal project.
Mm.
And I just wanted to share a little snippet on Ore, because it's a pretty special project to us. So Ore is actually a story written by my husband Kyle. He's been writing it since he was 19, and it's all written in poem. And it's a beautiful journey of a little boy, and it's very symbolic of the world that we're in right now. And essentially, it's a boy's journey to try and bring magic back to the real world, and help
Mm.
humanity remember its essence. And it's kind of like Dr. Seuss meets The Giver. And we're hoping one day that it'll become a stop motion animation, and hopefully a story that will inspire generations to come. And but we also produced an event recently called Or, which is essentially connecting wellness, music, art, and philanthropy. So we gather people together, and we have a really transformative time for everyone involved, but we're also raising funds for NGOs. And in the last 2 years, we raised about 1 million towards different nonprofits, including local Indigenous communities and terminally ill elderly communities, and our mangrove project, our coral, a tribe in the Amazon. And I think I just wanted to share that because I wanted to inspire people that work in the events world to when you talk about how can people get into climate, sometimes you don't have to completely shift careers. You can also bring climate or activism into your work. So if you
Mm.
are an event producer, or an artist or a musician, how can we bring awareness and philanthropy for causes into the way that we structure things? Like, can every event that is like people dancing and raving also be raising funds for clean water or for
Yeah.
plantation trees, and if I'm a famous musician, can like $1 of every ticket sale go towards planting a tree?
Yeah.
These are ways that we can all kind of catalyze impact without having to really drastically change the way we do things.
I
Um,
love that. I
yeah,
love that so much.
yeah.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time with everything else that you're doing. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise. I would love to just end with can I end with a little poem from Kyle's story?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to share our handles and
Okay.
stuff, and then why don't you do that?
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So this was episode 4 of Badass Women in Climate. I am the who am I? I'm the host, Rebecca Pan. My guest today is Angeline Chen. My producer is Marcela Avramescu. And you can find Trellis at Trellis Workspace on Instagram. Trellis.social is our website. And you can find Badass Women in Climate on YouTube. Okay, now to finish off with your poem. Sounds
Sweet. Okay, it's short and sweet, and it's from Kyle's story called Or. And he says, let the letters O and R serve as wings that take you far. They can turn a thing from this or that. I know it seems bizarre. But if you place an or after a sentence that you so believe, it opens up your world to the endless possibilities. You are young, boring, and dumb, or everyone else is just no fun. I'm a monstrous, scary creature, or your loyal friend and teacher. See, an oar can break the barriers that keep you kept and curled. It all depends upon the way in which you wish to watch the world. It's the best. Such a beautiful story. I can't wait for it to
yeah.
with the world.
After, if you want to share all of your like links and stuff, if Or lives anywhere in the world, I would love to share it.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, we're figuring that out because we produced this event in Nebraska. The website was imagineor.com, but we're transitioning out now and kind of working on our own projects now. So we're and they're going to take the event, the website, and turn it into a new event. So we're figuring out where Or will live, but I think we're exploring like a children's book. Eventually, we want to storyboard it and hopefully find someone that might want to help us turn into stop motion. And yeah, we'll see where we're open to the endless possibilities.
I love it.
Life.
Well, thank you for bringing balance and beauty and art to everything you're doing. It's really inspiring. I'm taking away a lot from this, and I think our listeners will also.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for everything you're doing and for this amazing conversation. And look forward to the next time we get to spend together.
Likewise. All right. Take care, sweetie.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye.